Good morning, you guys. I'm in Spoleto, Italy at my cafe with a spremuta. And there'll be people going by that I know that I'll wave and say hi to. So that's part of my life here, that I've lived here for 15 years. Got a little dog barking. The city's starting to come alive. I wanted to talk about what a travel coach is. How would a travel coach differentiate from, thank you, a travel agent or a travel advisor? Yum, yum. Some states have licenses for tour packages and for travel agents and travel advisors, and then other states have no licenses. And they're typically, and this is going to be extremely basic, but there's basically two types. You either come in and buy pre-made packages, or you go to a travel agent's office and say, this is where I want to go. Can you help me book my flight? Can you help me with my travel insurance? Can you make some recommendations? I want to travel through these countries. And they gather information and they put together an itinerary for you, and then they book the itinerary. A travel coach doesn't do that. A travel coach can assist you absolutely on identifying where you want to go. Usually there's a lot more questioning. The person desires a different type of experience. And so when I find women coming to me, I will ask them, what is it you see that this trip looks like? And depending upon how they explain the trip to me, sometimes I ask them, is there any reason why you didn't use a travel agent? It sounds like you've got a lot of this figured out. And what happens is the obstacles or the emotional blockage, or they want clarification, or they just desire something a little bit more intimate than just hopping city to city. And so they need assistance. And that's where a travel coach can do a questioning process with you and ask you, what are the expectations or the visions or the thoughts that you have? What is it that you want this vacation or experience to feel like when it's done? What is it that you need that the package tours are not giving you? And one of the things that I often hear is that a lot of these women have been on these tours. They go along with other women. Sorry, my hair is always kind of crazy with all this gray. It does its own thing. They have done the tours, and either the tours moved too fast, they've arrived in locations, so they just said, wow, I really just wanted to stay put in that city for a couple of days. I wanted to sit at that cafe for several hours. I wanted to pursue more stores, shopping. I wanted to see more of the arts, of the artigiani, the artists that are working, and they're not just galleries showing art, but they either want to go into the leather shops and the leather workers, or people that are actually doing the craft and the trade. The other thing I've often heard is they don't always want a high tourism factor. They don't want a city that the traffic is so high in tourism that the storekeepers treat them like they're merely a number for purchases. They want something more intimate. A lot of times they also don't want to be moving around a lot. So then my question would be, okay, so if you know where you want to go, then why don't you just book a room there or book a hotel there? And the problem is they kind of want a hybrid product. And a hybrid product would be, they want transportation to get to other locations, but they don't maybe want to do just the trains, or they don't understand the logistics with the trains. So what I have found, and the type of audience that I cater to, was trying to offer an experience that's like my life. For many years, from 33 through 43, might have been 32 through 44. I just hopped city to city to city. I would stay a couple of nights in the beginning, and then over time I started narrowing down which cities I liked. I learned how to do better research, and I started extending my stays to the point in time that I realized that I wanted to live in Italy. But I had to run some tests. So one of the first tests I did, I think, was 2005. I decided to sign up for art classes at Lorenzo de' Medici Istituto di Arte in Firenze, Florence. And so I went ahead and got an apartment for 2 months. And my youngest daughter, who's 21 now, was only, I think, 5 years old. I think it was 5. 2005. Maybe she was 4. Anyway, she was little. She was born in 2001, and I think this particular Florence experience was 2005, which would mean she was 4. I had to find a daycare for her because I attended college full-time, going to an art school every single day. I had stayed in one location. I was there for a little over 2 months, 2.5 months, and I would have to wake up, get her ready at 4. Yeah, it was 4. Get on the public transportation, get her over to the daycare in time, get her situated calmly with all the international students, then get back on the public system, and then go to wherever the classes were for these 2.5 months. I got to be there. I got to be careful. We would then go, and I would do my full day, and then at a certain hour, classes would end. I'd have to take the transportation back to her, pick her up, bring her back to the apartment, let her get situated. Maybe she needed a bath from playing in the dirt with all the kids. And then we would go on to have our dinners and live our life. And sometimes there were events in the evening with my art school, and I would even take her to the gallery openings, of which all the other students and the professors ended up getting to know my little daughter. That was 2005. So that was a test. And that was in a city that I didn't like, which was Florence. And I did that on purpose. But by the time the summer ended, I had become in love with Florence. And that proved to me, geez, if I could fall in love with a city that I don't like, then if I only found a city I did like, that would be wonderful. So my second test that I did was, ciao Filippo. The second test I did was 2006. While I was in Florence, I had the chance to get up to Cortona several times, and I fell in love with Cortona. I saw there was a chance that I can even do art shows in Cortona. So the next year, in advance, I mapped out where I would want to be, and I didn't want to go through all of the American agencies for renting of places because there was a very high buffer margin that you had to pay, increasing exponentially your rentals, because the person here in the village wants one price, the Italian agency wants one price, and then you stick an American agency on, and before you know it, the prices are exorbitant, and it would have been outside of my income level. So what I did was I stalked out or sought out several places. What were the locations? I made contacts, and then I proceeded to go back to the States in 2005 and started to plan my return for 2006. I then rented for several months. In reality, I should have only been allowed to have stayed here 3 months, but I think I rented the property for 4 months or 4.5 months, which means I overstayed my stay, which back then the Italian government and the European governments, countries, weren't able to control that, but now they can control it. They know when you're over your 3 months, which becomes a problem. So you can't do that anymore, but this, we're talking, was a long time ago. I then took the apartment, I did an art show, I absolutely assimilated myself into the culture. I actually was presented Buddhism that summer in the village, and the Buddhists were so wonderful. They invited me in with my horrible Italian at the time, very limited capability. And I just assimilated into that village and was invited to participate in the parades with the formal costumes of nobility. Actually, the bride in the ceremony was a strawberry blonde Italian, and at the time my hair was blonde with a little bit of red in it, actually, because that's when I was painting tigers. So it was blonde streaks and red streaks. And so I became the perfect mother for this bride. So for this ceremony, they used me as the mother of the bride for this huge event that went on, I don't know how many weekends during a particular month. So I felt very honored by that. And I made many friends, and it was the beginning of me realizing that with a small child, I could no longer do massive traveling, that I had to kind of pick a place and park myself down. So I would say that that's kind of the beginning of what I call il dolce far niente, the experience of doing nothing. And it doesn't mean you're not doing anything. It just means by American standards, you're not doing anything. I mean, I had art shows, I was making friends, I was going to cocktail parties and having breakfast with locals. I was making art, I was showing my art. I had a gallery show for 2 weeks with another American photographer. It was just splendid experience. But I also knew I wasn't feeling good that year. That was 2006. And right before I left, the doctor, after 4 years of me telling them something's not right with my heart, because I was an athlete, fitness contest, they kept not validating that there was something wrong with my heart. Something wasn't functioning. And then right before I left, literally 2 or 3 weeks before I left, I kept, putting the screws to the doctor saying, something is not right. And sure enough, he said, all right, fine, we'll do this certain stress test. And the doctor misread it and said my birth defect was cured, there wasn't any problem, everything's fine. But then when my primary doctor read it, he called me in and said, there's a serious mistake here, Francesca. Your heart, on a scale of, they said at the time 0 to 4, but I'm going to call it 1 to 5. 1 being a mild condition and 5 being the worst it could be. All of a sudden, he went from telling me that I was a 0 or 1, and when he read it, he said, you're a 5. I said, what? So here I went off to Italy with my small daughter, just knowing, don't worry about it, go to Italy, have fun. When you get back, everything will get it handled. And then when I did get back, after 4.5 months, I requested certain tests to be run. A TEE, transesophageal echocardiogram. I asked for many copies of the disc, and I sent the disc out to national experts across the United States, and they had a different opinion than my doctors with Kaiser Permanente. Both the first doctor, who clearly made a mistake, she read my severity of my problem in reverse, that it was severe, and she told me it was mild to non-existent. And the second doctor tried to cover for the first doctor, but tried to give me a more accurate experience and said you could wait 10 years before you have to have the surgery. When I sent the disc out to all of these national experts, the responses were, overall consensus was, you have 3 months before your valve blows. One doctor said, you've got 1 month. And another doctor said 5 months. So the reality was, I was sitting at 2 to 3 months before my valve would spontaneously blow, and in the moment of it blowing, it would flood my lungs, and I'd bleed out. I'd be unconscious, suffocating my lungs with my blood, and somebody would have to call the ambulance, and I'd have 20 minutes to be resuscitated. So at that point in time, we had to do an emergency surgery. So how the il dolce far niente experience came along is because I am disabled. Since the age of 44, I've been 100% disabled. I've had 2 heart surgeries, I've had 3 mini strokes, I've had 1 severe stroke that has semi-blinded my left eye. Excuse me. I've got autoimmune disorders and common variable immune dysfunction, extensive migraines. I just have many medical issues. And so initially, I almost started to not live emotionally because I was just paralyzed by everything that happened. And for about 2006, post open heart surgery, that was November, till, I'm trying to think here, it was 2011 January is when I got the brain scan that was able to diagnose some of the autoimmune disorders and infection in my brain, myalgic encephalomyelitis. So it wasn't, from January 2011 forward, I slowly spent 2011, 12, 13, and 14 rebuilding my life. So from 2006 to 2010, it was a straight decline. And at the point in time I got the proper diagnosis, I got back up. Sorry, I do have asthma. So there's something out here that's kind of triggering me. The reason I'm telling all of this to you is it's very easy for these type of life experiences to block a person. And trust me, I've been through many periods of being blocked. They bring up a lot of fears. They bring up a lot of phobias. And sometimes your fears and phobias are clearly displaced into other parts of your life. So, where coaches are not therapists, they're not attorneys, they're not psychiatrists, psychologists, they're not mentors. They are someone who will ask you a lot of questions, gather information from you, and then bounce back the questions to you. That at first your responses might seem superficial in answering those questions, but then depending upon your answers, they'll bounce back more questions. And so they try to find out where it is you want to go, what it is you want to do, what is it you want that experience to look like. And often, the truth is, with women over 55, particularly even older, 60 and 65, we become visible. We've got wrinkles, our skin is saggy, on any given day our hair is gray, you start accumulating fat around your stomach. You just feel like, so I have been told from my group, you feel invisible, you feel, okay, my girlfriend's here. I'm gonna have to pick this up in part 2. Ciao, Elizabeth.